Lord. All right, so we are going to go off the Torah reservation today because of the holiday and talk about Hanukkah and put it into perspective and see if we can't understand what it's really all about, whether we should do it or not do it, and kind of all that kind of stuff. So there are many levels to Hanukkah, to understanding Hanukkah, 7 that I can find. So I list them this way. There's what I call the Hanukkah level. There's the legendary level, in other words, the legend that surrounds Hanukkah. There's a prophetic level to it. There's a historic level to it. There is a messianic level to it. There's a moral level to it, and then there's an eschatological level to it, an end times level. So we won't have time to go through all of those today, but we'll kind of hit and miss on a few of them. So the Hanukkahs, plural, Hanukkahs level. So there was, back in the day, the tabernacle in the wilderness, right? So we find this in number 784, the first dedication of the altar. So the word dedication is the word Hanukkah. Hanukkah has to do with the dedication of something, okay? In that case, specifically an altar. So in the day when it was anointed or Mashiached by the princes of Israel. So we do want to take notice already in number 784 there that there's a connection to oil and anointing going on because Yaakov poured oil on a rock. Remember that, okay? That was an anointing or a Messiah-ing, if you will. Then there was, of course, Shlomo's temple, Solomon's temple. Again, and there was a dedication of the altar there. Zerubbabel's temple, when he built the temple and the walls. We see in Ezra 6:16, it says, and the children of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the children of the captivity kept the dedication of this house of God with joy. Okay, so that word dedication is the word Hanukkah. In Nehemiah 12:27, Nehemiah 12:27. And at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought the Levites out of all their places to bring them to Jerusalem to keep the dedication with gladness. So gladness is associated with the dedication of things, both with thanksgivings and with singing and with cymbals, psalteries, and with harps. Okay, so you get out your instruments, you play your favorite instruments. And again, we get whole temples made of rock, okay? And that temple is dedicated, Hanukkah, by the dedication of those rocks, of those altars. So Hanukkah is actually all over the Tanakh. It's in the apostolic codices, the New Testament. And we'll see more of these as we go on with our study. So on the legend of Hanukkah, we get this story about the Maccabees, and again, you'll find the original story of Hanukkah in the book of Maccabees. So just kind of open up your Bible and turn to that book, and you'll be able to read. Pam, why are you laughing?
All right. Mine's been ripped out.
Okay,
you
yeah.
You have to have a Catholic Bible.
Either a Catholic, you could get a Catholic Bible. You could have a Jewish Tanakh, I might have it. Or you can actually just order in the book of Maccabees, right? and you'll find it in one of like, it'll be under, you know, apocryphal writings or something like that. So, so the Maccabees successfully rebelled against Antiochus IV Epiphanes, and the defiled temple was purified, and the wicks of the menorah were burned for 8 days, as the story goes. Even though that there was only enough oil for 1 day of lighting the menorah. And then let's eat. You know, that's kind of the finish to all of our feasts. Let's eat. So we want to look at what the text actually says, which is going to take us to the historical level. So the legend of Hanukkah is about how the oil lasted 8 days. Okay, even though they only had enough for 1 day. Okay, that's the legend. So we want to look at the history now. Open this up. So if we were to run off to First Maccabees, chapter 4, 36 to 59, we are going to find the story and find out exactly what happened here, okay? So since it's not in your Bible, probably, I'll just read it to you. It says, then Judas and his brothers, this is Judas Maccabee, okay? And his brothers said, see, our enemies are crushed. Let us go up to cleanse the sanctuary and dedicate it, Hanukkah it. So all the army assembled and went up to Mount Zion. There they saw the sanctuary desolate, the altar profaned, and the gates burned. In the courts they saw bushes sprung up as a thicket, or as on one of the mountains. They saw also the chambers of the priests in ruins. Then they tore their clothes and mourned with great lamentation. They sprinkled themselves with ashes, and they fell face down on the ground. And when the signal was given with the trumpets, they cried out to heaven. Then Judas detailed men to fight against those in the citadel until he had cleansed the sanctuary. He chose blameless priests devoted to the Torah, and they cleansed the sanctuary and removed the defiled stones to an unclean place. They deliberated what to do about the altar of burnt offering, which had been profaned, and they thought it best to tear it down so that it would not be a lasting shame to them that the Gentiles had defiled it. So they tore down the altar and stored the stones in a convenient place on the temple hill until a prophet should come to tell them what to do with them. Then they took the unhewn stones as the law directs and built a new altar like the former one. They also rebuilt the sanctuary and the interior of the temple and consecrated the courts. They made new holy vessels and brought out the lampstand, the altar of incense, and the table into the temple. Then they offered incense on the altar and lit the lamps on the lampstand, and these gave light in the temple. They placed the bread on the temple and hung up the curtains. Thus they finished all the work that they had undertaken. Early in the morning on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is the month of Kislev, in the 148th year, they rose and offered sacrifice, as the law directs, on the new altar of burnt offering that they had built. At the very season and on the very day that the Gentiles had profaned it, it was dedicated with songs and harps and lutes and cymbals. All the people fell on their faces and worshipped and blessed heaven, who had prospered them. So they celebrated the dedication of the altar for 8 days and joyfully offered burnt offerings. They offered a sacrifice of well-being and a thanksgiving offering. They dedicated the front of the temple with the golden crowns and small shields. They restored the gates and the chambers for the priests and fitted them with doors. There was a very great joy among the people, and the disgrace brought by the Gentiles was removed. Then Judas and his brothers and all the assembly of Israel determined that every year at that season, the days of dedication of the altar should be observed with joy and gladness for 8 days. beginning with the 25th day of the month of Kislev. Now, Kislev overlaps our December and January, okay? Which for them is the 9th month because the year starts with a Viv, right? Okay, so let's ask a few questions of our text there, okay? We want to pick out what is truth and what is legend, okay? So how do we feel about oil?
How do you feel anything about oil?
Well,
I
you
like oil. It
put
feels
it on your
nice.
face, yeah. Okay, but in reference to the story, was there a lot of mention about oil?
Yep.
It was.
No.
I don't see the word oil. Did they light some lamps?
Yes.
In the beginning, yeah.
So what are they going to use to light the lamps? Oil,
Oil.
right? But the story doesn't mention anything about oil. It mentions sacrifices, it mentions songs. There was actually no words of oil anywhere in there. Okay. Did it mention 8 days?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So they decided that they were going to celebrate for 8 days because they got a gift. What was the gift what was the new gift they got or made?
The altar.
They got a new altar, right? They tore down the other altar, they put it in a clean place outside of the camp. And so they built a new altar out of unhewn stones, which all altars in Torah are made of unhewn stones. So if you were, hanging around in the Negev desert and you happened to go up on top of Mount Ebal and you discovered that there's an altar sitting up there, and that altar has hewn stones on it, you know that it's a Canaanite altar. But if it doesn't have hewn stones on it, then you would know that it is an Israelite altar. Okay, which we have found the Israelite altar up on top of Mount Ebal. Now, why would there be an Israelite altar on top of Mount Ebal?
Scripture.
Yeah, Scripture said when
Joshua told them to put it there.
because they put it there. That's right. Yeah. When Joshua came into the land, then they had 2 altars on 2 mountains, and they recited the law of Deuteronomy up on top of the mountain, right? So whenever an altar is made in Scripture, there is always a dedication of 8 days. Every altar has a dedication of 8 days. So they're not making up 8 days. 8 days is what Torah says to do when you dedicate an altar. So if we were to look at Genesis chapter 1 to 3, and how many days were there in that first week?
7.
7 days. And when did they start having life?
Life.
Yeah. They rested. Okay, so what did they do on day 7?
7. They rested.
They rested. Okay. Were they doing anything on the previous 6 days?
Working.
Were they alive the previous 5 days?
Oh, sorry. No.
Okay, born day 6, rested the first day, day 7, and then they started life on day 8 because the dedication process of the garden had taken place. Okay, so every altar is an 8-day celebration, period, or dedication. Okay, did we hear anything in the story about going back to our text that we read, okay, in Maccabees? Was there anything in the story about a miracle, how the oil lasted 8 days instead of 1?
Not fixed.
It wasn't there. There was
You're
nothing about
freezing
miracle.
again. You're freezing again.
Uh-oh.
You have had one good freeze. If we stop reacting, that's what's happening. So there we go.
So it's your guys' fault then.
Sure.
Probably, inevitably.
So was there a miracle in the Maccabee story?
No.
No, definitely not. Okay. Were there dreidels in the Maccabee story?
No.
No. Was there a lighting of a menorah in the story?
No.
Yes.
Oh, wait.
There
Yeah.
was
No.
lighting
Yeah.
of a lamp in the temple,
A light,
right?
not a menorah.
Was this a huge part of the story?
No. Nope.
Okay. So there's a difference between the legend that we get about Hanukkah that we hear about and what it's about, and what the actual historical account of what happened. Okay, so those are two different levels of understanding the story. And we want to try to kind of unpack that. So within well, because we have 8 days of gift giving here, so we're going to unpack those gifts now. So we have two variant spellings of Hanukkah in the Bible. You will see it as Het Nun Kaf He, and you'll also see it as Het Nun Kaf Aleph. Okay, two different ways to spell it. You can actually, there's a third. You would also see Het Nun Vav Kaf He. So three different ways to spell it.
Oh, no.
Again, it means dedication, consecration. You could think of it as inauguration. If we look it up, Strong's 2596, it says to train, to dedicate, to inaugurate, to train up. So the verse that we all heard coming through church was Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Okay, so that train up is the verb hanuk. Okay, so in other words, if you trained up a child in the way he should go, you Hanukkah'd that child.
Yes.
So everybody today would say, well, church doesn't celebrate Hanukkah. Yeah, you do. Don't tell me you don't. You're all trying to raise up that child in the way he should go. That's Hanukkah. Okay. Not only that, like, I don't know how many of you did this. In our church, we would, when the children were born, we would dedicate them. We had a little ceremony where we would dedicate them unto the Lord.
Yes.
Sorry, Hanukkah, you were dedicating, you were Hanukkah-ing those children. Okay. Or maybe you had a dedication ceremony when you added a new wing to the church or when you built the church, right? That's all Hanukkah. Okay. So the church does do Hanukkah. They just don't realize it. Or maybe a person rededicated their life to Christ, or even dedicated their life to Christ, right? Well, that's the word Hanukkah, right? So you have someone who's backslidden, they've done something wrong, and they come back and they go to the altar in prayer and they say, I'm rededicating myself to Christ. Okay, well, that's fine. Just realize you just Hanukkah'd yourself. So again, it's just important to be kind of honest about these words and what they mean. So Hanuk actually means to make narrow. Okay, so you are now making when you rededicate yourself, you're saying I'm on the narrow path. Okay. And as we raise our kids, we should be asking, are we making our children follow? Are we teaching? Are we training them to follow the narrow path? Okay, so we want to look at the historical context of Hanukkah now for a minute. So prior to 200 BCE, Judea was part of the kingdom of Egypt. When King Antiochus III, the Great of Syria, defeated King Ptolemy V, Epiphanes of Are we still online?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
you came back. You were gone, but you came back.
Okay, that was totally bizarre what happened on my side. Okay, so prior to 200 BCE, Judea was part of the kingdom of Egypt. When King Antiochus III, the Great of Syria, defeated King Ptolemy V, Epiphanes of Egypt at the Battle of Panium. About 200 BCE, Israel was a state in the Seleucid Empire, an empire ruled under Greek law and under the overall charge of the king of Syria. However, they could follow their own ancestral religion and its practices. In 171 BCE, there was a new king called Antiochus IV, who also called himself Antiochus Epiphanes, which means Antiochus the visible God. So presumably at the request of the Tobiids, who led the Hellenization faction in Jerusalem, Antiochus wanted all the empire to follow Greek ways of life and the Greek religion with all of its gods. And some of the Jews wanted to be more Greek, but most wanted to stay Jewish. This is what we call the process of Hellenization. Okay. So he banned reading of Torah, Sabbath, and festival observances, and death to those who disobeyed. I think we call that tyranny. So the brother of the Jewish high priest wanted to be more Greek. So he bribed Antiochus so he would become the new high priest instead of his brother. 3 years later, another man bribed Antiochus even more to let him become the high priest. To pay his bribe, he stole some of the objects made of gold that were used in the temple. On his way home from having to retreat from a battle, Antiochus stopped in Jerusalem and he let out all of his anger on the city and the Jewish people. He ordered houses to be burned down and tens of thousands of Jews were killed or put into slavery. Antiochus then went to attack the Jewish temple, the most important building in Israel to the Jewish people. The Syrian soldiers took all the treasures out of the temple, and on 15 Kislev, 168 BCE, Antiochus put up a statue of the Greek god Zeus in the center of the Jewish temple. But it had the face of Antiochus. Then on 25 Kislev, he desecrated the most holy place in the temple and destroyed the Jewish holy scrolls. So Antiochus then banned practicing the Jewish religion. And if you were found out and all your family were killed, and made the temple into a shrine to Zeus. There were many Jews killed for their faith. Soon afterwards, a Jewish rebellion started. It began when a former Jewish priest called Mattathias was forced to make an offering to Zeus in his village. He refused to do so and killed a Syrian soldier. Mattathias' son joined him and killed the other soldiers in the village. Mattathias was an old man and died soon after this, but his son Judah then took charge of the freedom fighters. Judah's nickname was Maccabee, which comes from the Hebrew word for hammer. He and his troops lived in caves and fought an undercover war for 3 years. They then met the Syrians in open battle and defeated them. When they got back to Jerusalem, the temple was in ruins and the statue of Zeus or Antiochus was still standing. They cleansed the temple. They rebuilt the Jewish altar on Kislev 25, 165 BCE. Exactly 3 years after the statue was put up, the altar in the temple was rededicated, Hanukkah, to God. There are several theories about why Hanukkah is celebrated over 8 nights. Well, we know it's about the altar. All altars took 8 nights. So one legend says that when Judah and his followers went into the temple, there was only enough oil to burn for 1 night, but that it burned for 8 nights. Another story or legend says that they found 8 iron spears and put candles that developed. Not again.
Yeah, you're doing it. Hey, what about turning off your video? Do you think that would help?
We can try it.
Whenever you see what you're seeing there, where you're going, I don't know what happened there, it's because you've timed out long enough for us to get a sound that the recording is stopped, and then it'll say recording in progress again when you connect back up. So it's a long timeout is what's causing that.
So
So Xfinity are filthy liars.
I agree. So we're gonna have to have another conversation with them. So okay, so let me take off my video and see if that changes anything for us here. Did we hear everything about what happened with the Maccabees?
No, we haven't been hearing a whole lot.
No, it's been about half on. So continue on with your video stop, and we'll see if that makes a difference.
All right, moving forward. So the brother of the Jewish high priest wanted to become a Greek, so he bribed Antiochus so he would become the new high priest instead of his brother. 3 years later, another man bribed Antiochus even more and let him become the high priest. To pay his bribe, he stole objects from the temple, gold objects from the temple. On his way home from having to retreat from battle, Antiochus stopped in Jerusalem, and he let out all of his anger on the city and the Jewish people. He ordered houses to be burned down. Tens of thousands of Jews were killed or put into slavery. Antiochus then went to attack the Jewish temple, the most important building in Israel to the Jews. The Syrian soldiers took all the treasures out of the temple, and on 15 Kislev, 168 BC, Antiochus put up a statue of the Greek god Zeus in the center of the Jewish temple, but it had the face of Antiochus. Then on 25 Kislev, he desecrated the most holy place in the temple and destroyed the Jewish holy scrolls. Antiochus then banned practicing the Jewish religion. If you did, then you were killed, and he made the temple into a shrine to Zeus. Many were killed for their faith soon afterwards, and a rebellion started. It began when a former Jewish priest called Mattathias was forced to make an offering to Zeus in his village. He refused to do so and killed a Syrian soldier. Mattathias' son joined him and killed the other soldiers in the village. Mattathias was an old man, and he died soon after this, but his son Judah then took charge of the freedom fighters. Judah's nickname was Maccabee, which came from the Hebrew word for hammer. So he and his troops lived in caves and fought an undercover war for 3 years, and then they met the Syrians in open battle and defeated them. When they got back to Jerusalem, the temple was in ruins, and the statue of Zeus was still standing. They cleaned the temple, rebuilt the altar, and on 25 Kislev, 165 BCE, 3 years after the statue was put up, the altar in the temple was rededicated to God. We all still there?
Ish.
Yeah,
You were
Sorta.
there, you're gone.
All right.
Kind of.
So we want to know if Hanukkah is a biblical holiday. Okay, so there are 2 words we need to look at. One is Mishteh, the other is Moedim. So Moedim is a commanded feast in Torah. It means an appointed time. It can mean a rehearsal, right? Sometimes it's referred to as a Hag or a Hagim, a feast. These would be Passover, Pesach, unleavened bread, matzot, first fruits, Pentecost, Shavuot, trumpets, Yom Teruah, atonements, Yom HaKippurim, and Booth's Sukkot. Mishteh we would find in Genesis 21:8. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. Okay, so when Isaac was weaned, Abraham threw a party. Okay, so rather than holiday, you could use the word party, you could use the word celebration. You just don't want to use the word holy days. Okay, because it's not a holy day. It's a party that you're throwing, and it's okay to have parties. There's nothing in Torah says you can't have a party. Another example of a mishteh is the party, the celebration of Purim, right? It's a national festival. It's like our 4th of July. So Hanukkah and Purim are celebrations over the enemies of our faith. Hanukkah is a picture of Antiochus Epiphanes as the anti-Messiah. We celebrate his defeat. Purim is a picture of Haman as anti-Messiah. We celebrate his defeat. So why is Hanukkah different from Christmas and Easter then? So in Deuteronomy 12:30, it says, "Take heed to thyself that thou art not snared by following them, after they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto Jehovah thy God, for every abomination to Jehovah, which he hateth, have they done unto their gods, for even their sons and their daughters have had burnt off, they have burnt in the fire to their gods, told us not to do what the pagans do." So he told us not to celebrate the feast of their gods. Okay. He didn't say you couldn't have a party once in a while. So we want to look at this word sheteh or mishteh. It comes, the verbal root is sheteh, and it means a drinking. We can find it in Esther, where it talks about a banqueting room, wine of his drinking, which the king drank in Daniel 1:5. It can be used for the word drink, and it can be used for the word banquet. Okay. Also, to drink, where's number 2? Drinking iniquity as in as water. The lame drinks in iniquity, to drink together, to banquet together. So it's about food and drinking. Okay. Now we could ask the question then, well, isn't Hanukkah just for the Jews? So it's an incredibly important celebration that was at least attended to by our Messiah, which should be at least acknowledged by all believers everywhere. Okay, yeah, Jesus did this. Okay, it's not evil, but what we should see in the party, the celebration of Hanukkah, is it has a pretty wild contrast to what many other celebrations that the modern church does. So we would look at Hanukkah as truth versus error. So these Maccabeans were standing up for truth. Yeshua stood up for truth. Honesty versus deception. Being authentic versus being counterfeit. Again, there's a huge connection with Hanukkah to the anti-Messiah. Holy versus common or secular. Clean versus unclean, Tameh and Tahor. There are future fulfillments in prophecy that are essential to understanding the end times, spoke of in the Brit Hadashah, that connect to Hanukkah. Messiah versus anti-Messiah. A radical revolution or transformation of the body of Mashiach is possible. Understand that before you can have the anti-Messiah, we're going to have to raise up a generation of Maccabees to stand up to that. Because if you're not a Maccabee, you're not going to make it through that period of time. You're going to have to stand up and be the freedom fighter, be the radical revolutionary. So are these things only for the Jews? Well, I think Paul Shaul would say, heaven forbid. Again, you know, everybody wants to know, well, who's the Antichrist? We want to know who the Antichrist is. Well, if you're going to want some clues into the anti-Messiah, you're going to have to go study Hanukkah. Sorry. Yeah, it's for you. Now, regarding isn't Hanukkah just a Jewish Christmas? You know, we have many trappings that we could fall into for Hanukkah. Now, you know, I have some sufganiyot over there. That would be a traditional Hanukkah food, jelly donuts. I don't have any gelt here, gold coins that are used for playing the dreidel game. I do have some dreidels. You know, I have a menorah, and I can light candles every night. But these are all just traditions, you know, that type of thing. They do make Hanukkah balls for your Christmas tree. That seems a little weird. And we could also talk about a mensch on a bench. Another common kind of Hanukkah thing that looks awful Christmassy to me. And then, of course, I want to show you just a quick little link here. Share. Go back to screen share for a second here. Hopefully you'll enjoy this also.
Turning your camera off doesn't seem to have had any effect on your disconnects. So
Good
if you
point.
want to turn that back on, you can feel free.
Oops, let's close that. Got way too many things going on here. There we go. Screen share. We want this one. Okay, I don't know. Again, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this. It's gonna start out, the video is gonna start out, and it kind of starts, it's like they're at a Passover Seder, so that should seem fairly familiar to you. But then it's going to take a quick change in pace. So I hope you enjoy this.
Max's mission after our son Max died of an overdose.
All right, can you see the video? And is anyone there? No.
Oh, now we are.
Okay, here, enjoy the video.
So now we drink the third cup of wine, Aleph Shemer Kilivitznu. And now, as is family tradition, Uncle Hanukkah Harry will tell us about the prophet Elijah.
Please stop. You're embarrassing me. Now, as you all know, I love Passover. It's no Hanukkah, but that's 9 months away. So I have plenty of time to relax, fly down here to Miami, visit my sister Cheryl, my nephew Ira, and this beautiful family. And now, Elijah. As you know, it is custom to set aside a goblet of wine for the invisible prophet Elijah, who visits every Jewish home that welcomes him. Now, it is at this point in the Seder when we open the front door for Elijah. Oi, come out!
Hi, I'm looking for Hanukkah, Harry. Hallmark, in association with the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, presents The Night Hanukkah Harry Saved Easter.
On Moshe, on Herschel, on Shlomo, since Hanukkah Harry ignites a year. On Moshe, on Herschel, on Shlomo, means that Hanukkah Harry is here. Jewish girls and Jewish boys, we dance the heart around
Okay, so has anybody ever heard of Hanukkah Harry before?
Nope,
Not
missed
quite.
it.
That was a new one for me this year. I had never experienced Hanukkah Harry before. So
Really?
yeah, so the fascinating thing, the question that arises here is, well, so Hanukkah is just the Jewish Christmas. Well, you can see where people get that from, because they have a Hanukkah, so that's their Christmas tree. They have all sorts of good treats. They have Christmas games. They have Hanukkah balls that they hang from trees. They have a mensch on a bench and Hanukkah Harry as Santa Claus. So there's all these things that kind of line up, right? So what that really expresses is, just like Christian holidays, Hanukkah can get out of control and become about the traditions, the lies, the falsehoods, the legends, instead of about truth. And the real root of Hanukkah is about truth. And so when we go down these roads of tradition and stuff like that, it hides the truth from being seen. When the point of Hanukkah is to stand up, to be the revolutionary under pressure, to be able to stand up, make a stand for what you actually believe in. That's what the Maccabees did. So consecration, dedication, inauguration. These are the things that Hanukkah is actually about. In the darkest part of the year, you are rededicating yourself. I'm going to be that Maccabee generation. So one thing that is important for us to understand is that Hanukkah actually shows up in the Gospels. So we can read in John chapter 10 that Yeshua was in Solomon's colonnade for the Feast of Dedication, which is another name for Hanukkah, Feast of Lights, Feast of Dedication. And it says, at that time, the Feast of Dedication took place in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Yeshua was walking in the temple in the colonnade of Solomon. That's John 10, 22 and 23. The master was acknowledging this feast during his time with the people, and we can follow his example, unite with Israel, and stand in solidarity with them. So Hanukkah is a story of religious persecution, and about a group of people who stood up to that persecution and fought back, honoring God in the process. Hanukkah is called the festival of the light of the world. So in Hanukkah, in John, when Yeshua walks into that colonnade there, They had set up, they did this at Sukkot and during the Feast of Hanukkah. They would set up 4 giant menorahs, and those 4 giant menorahs would light up all of Jerusalem. They were like 80 feet tall. And those 4 menorah were called the light of the world. So when Yeshua walks in and he says, I am the light of the world, he's saying, I'm those menorahs that you guys have put in there. I'm the one that brings light to the temple. I'm the one that brings the light to the world. So prior to us starting today, we were having a conversation, not the one about me getting married, thank you, where I said that I'd gotten some really good news, and I wanted to share that with you guys today. So as
your video's on the ceiling.
Oh, is that better?
Yes.
So I wanted to share this real quick with you guys today. So as probably most of you know, last week at Thanksgiving, I did this talk at a church, and that day we raised about $6,300 to buy out the brickyard in Pakistan. And that was it was just a very God moment to get all that to happen, and see that God was involved in this, and blah blah blah. Several people had come up to me and made pledges. They said, I don't have it with me today, I got to go home, I'll do it online giving, different things like that. And so people had given me pledges for like another $5,000. But, I'm kind of like, show me the money, we'll see what happens. So 2 days ago, I get a text early in the morning from the pastor, and he says, give me a call when you can, we need to talk.
We heard it. We only heard up to online giving.
Okay, so so they had pledged $5,000 for online giving, but I'm kind of like, show me the money, I'll wait until it actually shows up and I'll believe it, So 2 days ago, I get a text in the morning from the pastor. He says, we need to talk. So I called him up. What's up? Like, how could have I screwed this up?
You froze again.
So the pastor texts me and he says, we need to talk. And he says, so apparently people were really moved by this and they kept giving online. So he says, I want to know what to do with the money that's come in. And I said, well, how much money? And he said, $10,000.
Did he freeze again?
Did I freeze?
Yes.
Yeah.
We went to what to do with the money that was coming in.
So they collected, after I left, $10,000.
Woohoo!
Plus the 6,000?
Plus the 6,000. Plus.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've spent a lot of time in tears this week. That's actually we'll end up closing out 2 more brickyards over the year with that. We actually have to get Ahiz caught up with all the people that are coming in. It's like literally it's Acts chapter 2. Okay? We have so many people coming in that he now has to take care of and raise up pastors to take care of them and all those things.
Yeah.
So which is a great problem. Acts chapter 2 is a great problem. So but on top of that, before I had left the church, I was sitting next to Nita, and she got a text from a lady in the church, and she showed it to me, and it says, we need to do an event for this guy. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And so I met with her this last week. She has a ministry where she does she sets up meals for fundraisers. So on your guys' schedule, I need you to block out February 9th. We're going to do a fundraiser. And this is where God is really challenging me with Mishteh as opposed to Moedim. And again, I'm working with church people here. Okay. So it is kind of, as diminished as I can make it, a bit of a Valentine's theme. So I said, well, yeah, you know, that's really weird for us. That's not something we spend a lot of time doing. And in general, I hate Valentine's because it's only really good for like people who are married and dating. And so it excludes all the single people that will give me money. So we're going to call it Loving Your Neighbor, a Valentine's for Everybody. And typically for her fundraisers, she runs.
You froze up after Valentine's.
Valentine's for Everybody.
Okay.
So in other words, everybody can come and give. And we'll have a Pakistani meal. We will show the videos and the pictures from the August trip. We will show the slaves that we've bought out since then. And typical for her fundraisers, she usually raises about $10,000.
Ooh.
So yeah, so that would be, you know, a couple more brickyards for 2024.
Oh, cool.
Very nice.
Right? So make sure you guys are all in Eugene, fly in, drive in, hike in, whatever, ski in, whatever you need to do to get to over to Eugene for February 9th. Put that on your calendar.
Okay, I got
We're
it
going
on
to have
there.
a giant Mishteh, and we are going to celebrate what Yah is doing in Pakistan. Okay. So let's move on here. Go ahead.
Well, we only heard up to go to February, or put February 9th on your calendar. Then you disappeared.
Yes. So the next one is, did you know that Hanukkah commemorates the dedication of God's temple? So where is God's temple today? It's in here. Okay. It's about this getting cleaned up. So in the darkest part of the year, this is the time we do the internal work and get the crud out of the inside of us. And finally, and this is, I should mention real quick. So when the pastor called me about this, about the funds and all this money coming in and how to get it to me and, you know, all these things. And so I was then able to connect with him, and I used number 6 here. Well, you know, there would be no Christmas without Hanukkah. What? I said, well, if the Maccabees had lost, there would be no Jews. They would have been wiped out. And if there were no Jews, there'd be no Messiah. And if there's no Messiah, there would be none of your precious Christmas.
Yeah.
You froze up after there would be no Christmas. Froze.
Yeah, so no Hanukkah, no Jews, no Messiah, no Messiah, no Christmas.
Okay.
Right? And so I then went into and explained to him about all of the menorahs in the temple and how those menorahs were called the light of the world. He had never heard this before.
Oh, wow.
Right? Of course he's never heard this before, because the only people that talk about that is inside of the Mishnah and the Torah, inside the Talmud, right? It's the rabbis talking about it. So, again, this is one of those things that we can use today to create conversations with people, right? You don't have to stuff it down their throat. You don't have to hit them in the face with it, but you can just simply teach them things that they've never heard about before. Okay, let me see if there's anything else that I need to share here. Oh, we did that.
You went off, but you don't have to stuff it down your throat.
Or hit them in the face with, you shouldn't do Christmas. Instead, just teach them truth and let them figure out what to do with it. Okay.
Rather than arguing the.
Yeah, it's just not worth the argument, right? So that was all Apocrypha. Running through slides here, seeing if there's anything else I need to mention. We talked about that. So just on a random calendar thought, remember that Yeshua was conceived on the last day of Hanukkah. Okay, so when it says the light of the world came into the world, that was when he was conceived. Okay, he was born on the first day of Tabernacle. The light of the world tabernacled with us. He came into the world, into a dark place, the womb, on Hanukkah. Okay, so we're gonna close that and pause.
Brian, you're on